The amazing spider talk. The amazing spider talk. Come swing through the air, sit back and prepare for the amazing spider talk. 2 men who know the angles, uncover and untangle all the questions and the webs left.
Hey everybody, it's me, Dapper Dan Gavoston. I am joined by my co-host.
It's the mischievous one, or the mischievous one, Mark Ginocchio. How you doing, Dan?
I'm doing all right. Hey, we're going to keep this kind of casual tonight because we don't really have any notes on this. We're just going to talk kind of off the cuff about our feelings about this new Amazing Spider-Man Volume 6 creative team that was announced this week. We haven't really talked about this much, Mark, so it'll be kind of raw reactions here as we kind of figure this out. So if you haven't heard already, and I can't imagine that you would be subscribed to a Spider-Man Patreon account and not have heard this yet, but our new Spider-Man creative team is going to be writer Zeb Wells and artist John Romita Jr., friend of the show, John Romita Jr., coming on in April to kick off a new #1. At least we assume it's a new #1 if John Romita Jr.'s art is anything to go by. They showed a page of his artwork in pencil form, and if you looked at the top, it said it was page 19 of issue 1. So I think it's a pretty safe bet there. We've seen some 4 pages of preview art at this point that I thought was really fun. And we've got a little bit of a tease of the story. It seems like Dr. Octopus is after Peter again, and he's getting himself mixed up with the Rose and Tombstone, who are going to war with each other. And we got this really splashy page of Spider-Man holding some kind of like spider device to his chest in the middle of a smoking crater. And it said, "What did Peter Parker do?" So there must be some decision that he made that is turning his life to hell. In fact, in the text, it said that he's on the outs with Aunt May and his career and I think MJ too. So, classic Peter Parker making a bad choice and having to deal with the consequences of it. I don't know, Mark. Do you have any initial reactions to this announcement?
No, yeah, obviously. I mean, like, I was definitely surprised. I mean, like, it's so funny. Like, I guess I shouldn't have been surprised by by John Romita Jr. coming back to the book, considering he told us this as much over almost a year ago on our show, that, he was, he'd have something to talk to us about at some point. So, color me ashamed for not making that call from the get-go. But like, kind of, in the weeks preceding this announcement, there was a lot of buzz on at least the Twitter machine that the kind of the dark horse favorite for being the lead writer was going to be Jonathan Hickman, and lots of different opinions on that. And from my standpoint, I wasn't necessarily jazzed about Hickman because I don't know if his sensibilities work on Amazing Spider-Man, but it certainly would have been, in my opinion, a statement all the same to bring in someone like that and give him the reins of a book like this. He would certainly be putting his mark on Spider-Man if it was him. And I guess that's part of it with Zeb Wells. I mean, Zeb Wells is obviously no stranger to Spider-Man or even Amazing Spider-Man. He's been writing on the Beyond arc. He wrote during Brand New Day. He's written for tons of B-books and miniseries. I mean, but I guess that's part of it. It's like, oh, okay, this guy, I mean, like, is it even it's one thing to bring back a legend in the industry like John Romita Jr. and it kind of just feels fresh and new because what is JR going to do at this stage of his life? But when it's someone like Wells, who's kind of been kicking around, like never really has like hung on to a spider book to make a mark for himself, you're like, what is this going to be? I don't know. Like is he a fill-in? I mean, I don't. It doesn't look like he's going to be a fill-in. It's going to be his run, but like, is this going to be a 12-issue run? I don't know. Like, I guess that's part of it. It's like the Wells part is what I'm really struggling to wrap my head around.
Yeah, I actually went on like a Wells like binge over the past couple days just to kind of refamiliarize myself with his like Spider-Man work, and I think he's a totally like strong writer. I'm eager to see what he does with it. Like reading the 4 pages of the preview pages we got, like there's some funny, exciting stuff in there, some deep cuts that I really enjoyed. I mean, the return of Digger, whether that is prompted by John Romita Jr. or not, is cool,
Hmm.
and the art looks great. But yeah, it's not a name that like I think is gonna like sell some books. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that you could see that struggle in the advertising of this, which is to say they were like Shed, one of the all-time favorite Spider-Man stories written by Zeb Wells, like the writer of Shed. And it's like, look, Shed is okay, but I think it's an interesting book. I don't know that I loved it and all the decisions made in it, but it's definitely like a writer that had a take on something, and
Right.
I appreciate that about it. Not to mention that my image is printed in the back of those issues, but that's a whole other thing. But it just seemed like I'm with you. When the name was announced, I was like, I bet we're going to get some good Spider-Man comics out of this. But it wasn't the kind of thing that I was like. I was expecting Donny Cates, to be honest with you. Like, I thought that was
Yeah.
like the pairing to sell books till the end of time.
Yeah. And of course, like, everyone who was trying to like kind of maybe lead people towards Hickman was like, well, yeah, but Cates is on Hulk, he's on Thor, there's no time for Cates, and they were right too. It's just that they were not right about Hickman. But like, yes, I mean, like, I don't know, like, and we can sidebar into this right now if you want to, Dan. It's interesting to me that a book like Amazing Spider-Man, which despite how the MCU has kind of changed our perspective about what are the true flagship books of Marvel. I don't know. To me, Amazing Spider-Man is still a flagship book. So why not get a name? Is it that they can't attract the names, or that they don't want the names? And I don't know if you have any thoughts about that when it comes to a creative team right now.
I mean, honestly, I think Marvel has largely lost all of their big name people. I mean, Hickman is maybe the last guy that's hanging around, and even he is kind of, bouncing in and out. And I don't know, like, I'm not like well versed enough in the industry to tell you one way or the other. And they've got a lot of names that I think are really strong. Your Jed McKays, your Al Ewings, that are definitely attracting people to their work. But I don't think that they're on the level of like a Brian Michael Bendis or a Hickman.
Mm.
So I just don't know like why they're not able to get it. I think before I would have said it was the rate at which the book was going to come out, and that a lot of their writers are really they're much more like cerebral thinking writers. Like I don't want to see Hickman or Al Ewing on this book, to be honest. Like I don't think they're a good fit for Spider-Man. And like the one guy that I think is like truly their biggest name that's a fit for Spider-Man already did it for 10 years. And that's Dan
Yeah.
Slott.
I was gonna say like and I'm not advocating for this because we were certainly almost more than anyone towards the end of Dan Slott's run saying it's time for a change. But like even that, I would like there was a part of me in the back of my mind with like would they bring Slott back? Like when it became clear that JR was gonna be doing the art, I was like, well, Slott and JR, that would be a creative team that would turn heads. We're bringing Slott back and we're bringing JR back, but again, not that I wanted that, but like you're right. But it's like who's left from in terms of a head turning name at this point.
I mean, do we think that Zeb Wells is as big a name as Nick Spencer?
I, you, that's the thing. I mean, like Spencer, at least in my mind, like he had full runs on a couple of books that like you could really turn to get a full sense of his body of work. I mean, yes,
And he wrote
Zeb
major
Wells.
events for Marvel.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously, yeah. I mean, the Captain America, was a huge touchstone book for them for a while. But like, I'm even thinking in terms of like Superior Foes and Ant-Man and Secret Avengers, and I mean, like Spencer had a resume, and yes, Wells has written a lot of books, but it's never like I think of and this is not to disparage him because you need this. Every comic book company needs this, but I think of Wells as like a fill-in writer. It's like this is the guy you can bring in for an arc or two when you're in between. Like, the fact that Beyond is his brainchild, like makes perfect sense to me. That he would, this kind of weird in between era where, the book, the Spencer run ended sooner than Marvel expected, and they needed to kind of get to the next one. It's just I didn't think that Wells would be the next one, and it makes me wonder, was it supposed to always be him, or did they not that they settled, because I don't want to, like, again, Wells is a perfectly sound, good, solid writer, but like it just doesn't it something doesn't quite add up to me here why we landed on this choice, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, to his credit, again, and I agree with you on all that. He just got done with an 18-issue run of Hellions, and he
Right.
wrote Ant-Man as well, but only for 5 issues. But it was Swarm. It was about Swarm, so I'll give him
There you
credit
go.
there. But yeah,
Right.
I mean, he's kind of been all over the map. I mean, like, I really loved his Spider-Ham book from last year, and it was 5 issues and it was done and it was brilliant. But he's kind of bounced in and out. But I don't know. You know what? Here's the really good thing about this, I think, Mark, is it has been a long time since Amazing Spider-Man was an art-dominated book, right?
Yeah.
Like, who is the last, like, the last time the book was probably John Romita Jr., when it was like
Yeah.
consistently like I mean, that's not to say there weren't great artists along the way. Like, would I love Patrick Gleason to get a Spidey book? Yes.
Yeah.
Like Humberto Ramos kind of did, like, Ryan Stegman, Humberto Ramos, Giuseppe Camuncoli during the Superior and Dan Slott eras. Yeah, I mean, great, brilliant art, Marcos Martin, but we've not had a consistent, like, this is the guy. And in
Right.
the announcement for this, they said this is the Zeb Wells, John Romita Jr. run. And to me, that is as good of a thing as I could have heard. Like, regardless of the name, like, I think John Romita Jr. is enough of a name to carry this book without the big name writer. And I'm ready for a Spider-Man book that's art dominated, if only because I think that's going to mean the book has to slow down a little bit. And are we
Yeah.
getting a monthly ASM? What do you think?
I mean, I would welcome that at this point. I mean, like, and talking both selfishly and unselfishly. Selfishly and being like, Dan, as much as I love talking to you, like this kind of weekly schedule that we're on is a little bit of a burnout from a podcasting standpoint.
Yeah.
But like, but even from a reading standpoint, it's like. Not that I don't like going to the comic book store every week. I mean, even, granted we're in a pandemic right now, so maybe we shouldn't be going out all that much, but still, it's like just like that like have to keep up, have to keep pace with what's coming out. It's a bit much. And yes, I agree with you about that art-driven book. I mean, my only word of caution of that is I kind of felt like the marketing was similar when it was Nick Spencer and Ryan Otley, like and certainly I felt like Otley had the potential to be an art-driven book, but he just couldn't keep up with the book, with the schedule, so it didn't work that way. And like so, whatever they end up doing in terms of the scheduling of the book, I just hope that we don't lose JR after an arc or two, you know what I mean? And then get him back for an arc and then lose him for an arc again, like if this is truly what it's going to be, then like that's what I mean, 100% what I want to see. I mean, even if it's like we're just going to do 20 issues, kind of like what Beyond is. We're going to do 20 issues for the next year and a half or whatever it ends up, however they want to pace out the schedule, and it's just going to be Wells and Romita Jr. every issue. Like, I welcome that, with maybe one or two fill-in issues for whatever reason. Like I think that then I would get a true sense of what this vision is for this arc, and I would be truly into it. But like, if we're gonna end up, if this is gonna be a precursor to like, oh, we're gonna get this guy to write a few issues, or oh, here's the Patrick Gleason issue, like I like this book is dying for some consistency. Like we're coming off of an arc or excuse me, a creative run that was kind of truncated unexpectedly, and we'll one day get the full story of what happened and why it ended the way it did. But the bottom line was it was not expected and disappointing. And then we went into this other arc with this rotating creative team, which, I give them all the credit in the world for kind of throwing this together at the last second. But like we've been talking about it in our review episodes, Dan, these issues kind of lacking tone and consistency from issue to issue. So like, for the love of everything, like give me 2 to 3 solid years of a Spider book that's just consistent in tone and style and vision and what the end game is, and have that kind of build to that and end somewhere. And I'm a happy guy. So that's what I want. So let's see if we get it.
Yeah, I mean, it might be just complete wishful thinking, that I'm going down this road, in regards to this. But, I like to think that like the appeal of this book is going to be the art, right? Like they're going to sell this book on the art. And that means like having John Romita Jr. and meeting John Romita Jr.'s needs, which would probably be doing a monthly book. And like, that's my hope, is that like actually having that big of the name on the art end causes everything else to slow down, because you can push a writer to do that much, but you really can't push an artist in the same way. And like, that's my hope, is that the good news on this is it's a way of throwing on the brakes a little bit. And who knows what else could get caught up in the brakes. The writing could get better. The editorial could actually get a chance to read the books they're putting out and pace them appropriately. I mean, who knows? But look, I am thrilled to death that John Romita Jr. is coming back on this book. He's my favorite modern Spidey artist without any question. And reading those preview pages, I think he's a little bit quicker than he used to be. Like it's a little sloppier in his more kind of modern style, but like I'm allowing the guy to grow, and adapt his style, because that's how we get to the good stuff of him. Do you think it's a step back? Like, is he a name that like is a movement of regression for Amazing Spider-Man, that we're going back to this guy who's had like 4 runs on this book?
No, I don't see it like that. I mean, like I see it as acknowledging your history, and I think, I mean, the guy's a legend. I know he would like blush and kind of, like he did as much when we had him on the show, but like, I mean, like he's a legend who is, and this is not to disparage any of the other legends that we've had on this show, but he's a legend that can still bring it at an A+ level to this day. You know what I mean? Like he has not lost his fastball, in my opinion. Like you still look at what he's doing, and it's still, oh man, that's JR. He is still at the top of his game. Like he might even be better than what he was. So he was certainly better between his first stint and his second stint. Between on the book. So no, I don't see that as kind of a regression for the book or for him. I mean, like maybe it's a regression for him. Like, oh, I'm back in Spider-Man again. But like, no, I mean, like, you are right at the end of the day. And like I said, as long as they adhere to it, that like we talked about, oh, who are the names? I mean, there's probably no bigger name in the Marvel family right now than John Romita Jr. So that's your name. So that's your star. And, for someone like you, Dan, who, is definitely more, I think, focused on the visual and the art side of the storytelling elements than maybe I am sometimes. Like, hopefully this book just sings from the rooftops with JR kind of pushing the boundaries a bit. And I'm looking forward to that. I think
it's also worth noting that it's not just JR. He's coming back with Scott Hanna on inks. And Scott Hanna's inks, I think, are really what made his work stand out in that 2000 to 2004 era with JMS. I mean, that was the like ultimate team. And, he's done books without Scott Hanna, but I think his works the best with Scott Hanna's inks. And that they were able to get him, that's a key part of the team here.
Yeah, I would say like probably the only other inker that I would maybe match up with Hannah would be Klaus Janson for JRJR. But like either way, like like you said, that's a great pairing. So I mean, like I'm like you said, I'm excited that we're gonna get John Romita Jr. back, and hopefully we can get him back on the show. We're working on it, guys. But either way, like it's gonna be just so like a warm blanket seeing him on this book. like there's just nothing better in my opinion. And like you said, Zeb Wells, he's written some good stuff. I enjoyed what he did on Avenging Spider-Man with Joe Mads, and that kind of got truncated, and it was probably because of Joe Mads. But again, like Zeb Wells has written good stuff, good Spider-Man stuff. I guess I just need to kind of see what can he do consistently with the character over the long haul. Like I that is my biggest concern going into this, coming off of this announcement, is like, what can he do over the long term with this character? But there's a lot of potential here, and hopefully in a year or two from now, when we're talking about issues, we're not, the whole idea of like, why couldn't they get a name writer? It's just going to be a distant memory, because it's going to be like, this is this great, solid, old school Spidey stories that go somewhere with some of the best art that you can find in a comic book right now. And I think the potential is there to say that.
Yeah, and let's not forget, like, this is the 60th anniversary of Spider-Man. We've got issue 900 coming up, so we're going to get JRJR doing his third centennial issue. There's no way he's not doing it. And I wanted to just say like one more like kudos to Zeb Wells, which is like rereading a lot of his stuff. Like I think it's very consistent. He knows tonally how to write a comic, whether it's a comedy book or something more thoughtful. His his Avenging Spider-Man team up with Hawkeye and Captain America are really heartwarming tales. He did an Avenging Spider-Man where it's like Peter and Aunt May going to Ben's grave, which was a really nice story, illustrated by Steve Dillon of all people. Really bizarre looking comic. And even some of his Tangled Web stuff where he's got like this silly Jonah adventure where it's like bring your kid to work day at the Bugle. I think he can kind of cover all of these different bases. And another thing that I think works in his favor is if you read a bunch of his stuff, he's really interested in kind of this toxic male father figures throughout his books. And I think that is actually a really reoccurring theme in the Spider-Man mythos. So like, I hope that, having worked through this in a number of other books, whether it be like Venom Dark Origin or, even some of the stuff with Jonah, even though it's not canon anymore, I'm curious to see what he does, with that thematic in Spider-Man, which I consider a core thematic on this title. So, I'm excited for him, even if it's not one that's going to burn a hole in my wallet.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, who are you kidding? We're buying these books anyway, and like, give me some hot variants for a new issue #1, and take my money, Marvel. You win again.
I will say those variants were kind of disappointing to me. They're also generic, but I don't know.
I haven't seen any of the others. You're talking for the new issue 1. They have the variants.
Yeah,
already,
they've got about a half dozen already.
Okay. I haven't. You're more invested in it than I am right now.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to throw out there on this one, Dan?
I mean, just for our own show's purposes, like we're buddies with John Romita Jr. We got him on speed dial. It'd be great to get like Zeb Wells on the show. I mean, this could be the first time that we like have on a writer and artist of Spider-Man on our podcast. Like, I think we could totally get Zeb Wells.
Yeah, I should hope so. Well, don't forget, we did have Nick Spencer and Steve Lieber on at the same time.
I
And
just
that
want
was
to
their
get
first
someone who is
conversation together.
currently writing or drawing the book. That is what I would like.
I see. I
Yeah.
gotcha. Well, I was just impressed that when we had them, it was like, oh, this is our first time talking to each other. It's like, wait, what?
That still remains maybe the most baffling moment in Amazing Spider Talk history to me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No
What are you going
doubt.
to do? Well, anyway, Mark, I'm excited to talk to you about these issues. We've got, 3 more months until they start up. And, maybe these spider offices will see fit to give us a break by moving it to a monthly book. And then you and I can really hunker down and talk about these things in great depth because we won't feel the pressure of doing it every week.
As I said, just in time for your life to change.
Yeah, right. I mean, look, that might be a blessing, More on that to come in the future. But yeah, Mark, this is fun. And I hope everybody got something out of this. And thanks again for supporting us on Patreon. This is going to be just on Patreon. And I hope you guys enjoyed this, because we'll do more things like this maybe if you guys think it's cool.
Absolutely. And remember, everyone, with great podcasts, there must also come the amazing